Ladies and gentlemen, when the world goes quiet and all the voices fade into the background, that's when the real war begins. Not a war with weapons or enemies outside, but a war inside your mind, where silence is louder than applause, where discipline screams louder than motivation, where every step you take in the dark alone is a message to the universe that you're no longer begging for light because you've become it. And while the crowd is busy chasing trends and noise, you sit still, calm, unmoved, because you've learned that when you stop announcing your every move, when you stop explaining your worth, when you stop feeding distractions and start feeding your soul, the noise stops needing your attention and the world, one piece at a time, starts falling into place, not because it suddenly got easier, but because you got quieter, sharper, stronger. And while they were busy watching, guessing, doubting, you were building, bleeding, breathing in purpose, becoming the kind of person who doesn't shout in rooms to be heard, but walks into rooms and silence follows, because presence, real presence, doesn't beg, it commands. Ladies and gentlemen, when the world gets loud and your name disappears in the noise, when everything around you is a distraction dressed like an opportunity and every voice tells you who you should be, that is when your silence becomes your weapon, because silence is a weakness. It's power under control. And when you stop trying to convince the world of your worth and start proving it to yourself in the dark where no one is watching, that's when your life starts to change. And you realize that the moment you begin to focus on yourself and stop explaining your dreams to people who were never meant to understand them, the chaos begins to fade, the noise begins to break, and the path you were meant to walk on begins to reveal itself with each silent, powerful step you take. And while others are chasing applause, you're chasing growth. While they run toward the spotlight, you're becoming the fire that lights your own way, and they won't see it coming, because they were watching the stage while you were mastering the shadows, building your spirit, sharpening your mind, and turning every scar into strength, every failure into fuel, and every quiet morning into a battle won. And what they don't know is that peace isn't found in applause or popularity. It's found in the calm confidence of a soul that knows its purpose. And when the world laughs because you walked away from the noise, let them, because lions don't explain themselves to sheep, and silence isn't you giving up. It's you preparing for a comeback so loud it doesn't need sound. Because real success doesn't shout, it arrives. And when you become so focused, so obsessed, so in love with your own growth, that you stop checking who's watching, something powerful happens. The universe stops resisting you and starts aligning with you, because focus is magnetic, silence is strategic, and discipline is divine. And in a world full of performers, be the architect. In a room full of noise, be the calm. In a storm full of chaos, be the stillness. Because nothing attracts peace like a soul that's mastered its war, and nothing shakes a person who's already met every version of themselves in silence. And if you ever feel like it's all falling apart, just remember that sometimes the pieces have to fall out of place so they can fall into the right place. And when you choose silence, when you choose focus, when you choose to build instead of broadcast, to move in purpose instead of panic, to grind instead of gossip, the world will fall quiet, not because it gave up, but because it had no choice but to listen to the echo of your growth. And that's when everything begins. Not when they cheer, but when you rise without needing them to. And as you keep moving forward in silence, you start to understand That patience isn't waiting, it's working while you wait. It's waking up every day with no applause, no recognition, no validation, and still showing up like you're the headline, because the real ones don't need reminders. They remember who they are even when the world forgets them. And every time you choose to stay silent while others speak nonsense, every time you walk away from a fight that doesn't serve your mission, every time you shut down the noise and turn up the discipline, you're not running, you're rising. And one day they'll ask how you did it, how you kept going, how you didn't quit when you had every reason to. And you'll look them dead in the eye with that same calm fire and say, I was too focused, too quiet, too far ahead for you to see me coming, because I don't announce moves, I make impact. And while they were posting, I was practicing. While they were flexing, I was fixing. While they were watching the clock, I became timeless. And now that the dust is clearing, now that the noise has died down, they finally see what silence built. Something unshakable, unbreakable, undeniable. Because success isn't about being seen, it's about being unstoppable. And when your back was against the wall and the lights were off, you kept going, you built in the dark what now shines in the light. And it's not luck, it's not magic, it's raw, refined, relentless. And that's why you don't flinch anymore, you don't chase anymore, because you've learned that the world bends for those who bend themselves first. And in your silence, you discovered the most dangerous version of yourself. The one who doesn't need validation, who doesn't need noise, who doesn't need to explain anything, because you are the proof. And when you walk like you already know where you're going, even the ground beneath you starts to believe it, because confidence isn't loud, it's quiet. It's built in those lonely nights when quitting whispers louder than hope, but you keep walking anyway. When you cry, but you don't collapse. When you feel fear, but still face the fire. Because you learn that the most powerful thing you can ever become is the person no one saw coming. The one who wasn't picked, wasn't praised, wasn't promoted, but still rose like thunder from a silent sky. And now that you're here, now that you've survived everything meant to break you, you realize it was never about proving them wrong. It was always about proving yourself right. And that's why you don't need noise, don't need a crowd, don't need the spotlight, because real greatness grows underground, where no one claps but everything counts, where discipline is your oxygen and every setback is just another rep in the gym of your soul. And by the time they notice, it's already done. By the time they speak, you've already moved, because you don't live in the past. They're still there, doubting, talking, sleeping, but you're too far gone, too deep in your mission, too locked in your purpose to ever be shaken again. And the silence you once feared has now become your fuel, because there is nothing more dangerous than a person who's found peace in their own company. Nothing more unstoppable than someone who's made the grind their best friend and the noise their motivation. And now that you've built it in silence, you can walk in confidence, because your silence was never weakness. It was the strategy of a storm preparing to rewrite the sky. And the reason they can't understand your calm is because they've never walked through chaos with a steady heart. They've never sat with pain long enough to make peace with it. They've never turned their wounds into wisdom or their scars into a strategy. But you did. You took every betrayal, every failure, every silent night and turned it into fuel. And now your silence isn't just golden, it's dangerous, because you've become the kind of person who doesn't just survive storms, you study them. You learn their rhythm, you match their energy and move through them like they were sent to test your evolution. And when they tried to break you, you bent. When they tried to bury you, you grew. And now when they speak your name, they speak it softer, with a hint of respect, a tone of confusion, because they can't figure out how someone who disappeared came back unrecognizable, stronger, wiser, untouchable. And you don't need to explain it. You just keep building, keep working, keep walking, because this is what happens when you stop showing people the blueprint and start building the empire. When you stop giving access to those who only brought noise and start surrounding yourself with silence, and the higher you climb, the quieter it gets, because success doesn't shout. It whispers to those who can hear through the noise, and you didn't just hear it, you became it. And now the silence that once scared you is the kingdom you rule, because the loudest power is the one that no longer needs to speak. And when you finally understand that not every battle is worth your energy, not every insult deserves your answer, not every room deserves your presence, you begin to conserve your power. You begin to sharpen your silence into a weapon more effective than any response, because maturity is learning to stand so still that chaos can't find you, to grow so focused that distractions shrink in your shadow. And now when they look at you, they don't see who you were. They see what discipline built. They see what focus forged. They see what silence sculpted in the shadows, and you don't have to talk about it because your results already screamed louder than any explanation ever could. And while they were looking for shortcuts, you were climbing every step with blood in your shoes and fire in your chest, because you knew from the start that elevation costs isolation, greatness demands distance, and peace requires sacrifice. And though they laughed when you withdrew, mocked you when you stayed quiet, doubted you when you went ghost, they forgot that a seed always disappears before it breaks the earth and touches the sky. And that's what you were doing, rooting deep, grinding low, growing silent so you could rise unshakable, because nothing echoes louder than a person who made it without needing to be seen on the way up. And now when you walk in a room, you don't speak first, because presence doesn't require noise. It demands respect, and you earn that not through fame, not through flashes, but through every silent decision to keep going when nobody clapped. And the truth is, while they were waiting for motivation, you were building momentum. While they needed crowds to clap, you became your own echo, your own fire, your own fuel, because you realized that purpose doesn't need an audience. It needs obedience. And you gave everything you had to a dream no one else could see, a vision too big for the shallow minds that surrounded you. And in that lonely climb, in that brutal stretch of nights that blurred into mornings, you didn't complain, you didn't quit. You got quieter and stronger and deeper, because you weren't building a moment, you were building a legacy, something that would outlive trends, outshine noise, and outweigh doubt. And now they say you changed, but what they mean is you grew beyond what they could control. You outgrew the versions of you they were comfortable with, and now your silence speaks volumes they were never ready to hear, because success whispered your name long before they believed in you, and you answered it not with noise, not with approval, but with action, with consistency, with relentless pursuit. And now every step you take shakes the ground they thought you'd never rise from. And you don't need to announce your arrival, because when a lion walks, it doesn't roar, it moves with the calm certainty that everything around it already knows who it is. And that's you now, unbothered, unshaken, undeniable.